Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, staring at the empty space where New Haven Colony should have been bustling with activity. The silence from the communications array felt wrong, very wrong. For 3 days, they had been trying to reach the colony, and all they got back was static. "Lisa, run another scan," Morrison said to his communications specialist. Lisa Brooks had been working the controls for hours, her face growing more worried with each failed attempt. "Still nothing, Captain," Lisa replied, her voice tight. "No response from any frequency. Not even automated systems." Morrison felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. New Haven Colony housed over 2 million people. They had families, children, scientists working on terraforming projects. A place like that did not just go silent without reason. "Marcus, what are your sensors telling us?" Morrison turned to his chief science officer. Marcus Webb looked up from his console, his face pale. "Sir, I am picking up debris fields in orbit, lots of them, and the energy readings—" He paused, checking his data again. "They show signs of massive bombardment. Recent bombardment." Morrison closed his eyes for a moment. He had hoped there would be some explanation. Equipment failure, solar storms, anything except what his gut was telling him. "Take us in closer," he ordered. "Full scans of everything." As the Vengeance moved toward the planet, the crew began to see the full scope of what had happened. The orbital stations that should have been busy with traffic were twisted metal ruins. The defense platforms were nothing but scrap floating in space, and the planet itself. "Dear God," whispered Lisa as the main screen showed the surface. Where green fields and growing cities should have been, there were only black craters. The atmosphere was thick with smoke and ash. Nothing moved. Nothing lived. "Captain," Marcus said, his voice shaking, "I am reading massive radiation signatures across all the major population centers. This was not random destruction. Someone targeted every single settlement." Morrison gripped the arm of his command chair. "Any survivors?" "Scanning for life signs now," Marcus replied. Minutes passed. Then more minutes. Finally, Marcus looked, up with tears in his eyes. "Nothing, sir. No human life signs anywhere on the planet." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of ship systems. 2.5 million people. Gone. "There!" Lisa suddenly called out. "I am getting something from the Colonial Archive Station. It is damaged, but some data storage systems are still working." "Put it through," Morrison ordered. The speakers crackled to life with static. Then a voice came through, weak but clear. It was Governor Patricia Hill, the woman who had led New Haven Colony for the past 5 years. "This is Emergency Broadcast 77 Alpha. If anyone receives this, New Haven Colony is under attack. Unknown alien vessels appeared in our system. 6 hours ago, they ignored all attempts at communication. They began orbital bombardment immediately." Static filled the speakers for a moment. Then the governor's voice returned, more urgent now. "They are targeting civilian areas first. Schools, hospitals, residential zones. This is not a military action. This is deliberate slaughter. Our defense grid is down. The orbital platforms are destroyed. We have no way to fight back." Another burst of static. When the voice returned, explosions could be heard in the background. "The bombardment has stopped, but now they are releasing something into our atmosphere. Chemical weapons, maybe biological. People are dying in the streets. Children are—" The governor's voice broke. "God help us. They are not trying to conquer us. They want us all dead." Morrison felt rage building in his chest like a fire. These people had been farmers, scientists, teachers. They had no military beyond basic defense systems. They were terraformers trying to build a better world. The transmission continued. The alien ships are massive, dark hulls with strange markings. They have not tried to communicate at all. They just started killing us. I am sending all our data on their ships and weapons to the Colonial Archive. Someone needs to know what happened here. Someone needs to know that we tried to surrender, tried to talk, and they would not listen. The sound of more explosions came through the speakers, closer now. This is probably my final transmission. The atmospheric contamination is spreading fast. Most of our people are already gone. To whoever finds this, tell Earth what happened here. Tell them that the aliens showed no mercy. They killed children hiding in shelters. They poisoned our air and water. They wanted genocide, pure and simple. A long pause filled with static. Then the governor's voice, quieter now. Tell my daughter on Mars that I love her. Tell her that we fought as long as we could. Tell her that we never stopped believing that humanity would find a way to make them pay for this. The transmission ended with a final burst of static. The bridge of the Vengeance remained silent for long minutes. Morrison could see his crew struggling with what they had just heard. Lisa was crying openly. Marcus stared at his console with clenched fists. Download everything from that archive, Morrison finally ordered. Every piece of data about these aliens. Ship designs, weapon signatures, everything. Already on it, sir, Marcus replied through gritted teeth. Morrison activated his ship's communications array. Get me Admiral Claire Davis at Earth Command. Priority 1. Tell her we have a code black situation. Within minutes, Admiral Davis appeared on the main screen. She was a tough woman in her 50s who had commanded fleets in 3 different conflicts. Morrison had never seen her look worried before. Captain Morrison, your message mentioned code black. Please tell me you are wrong. I wish I was, Admiral, Morrison replied. New Haven Colony is gone, all of it. Over 2 million civilians murdered by unknown aliens. We have recovered data showing deliberate targeting of non-military areas. This was genocide. Admiral Davis was quiet for a moment. Morrison could see her processing the information, understanding what it meant. Send me everything you have, Captain. Every piece of data, every recording. I want a full analysis of these alien weapons and ships. Yes, ma'am. And Captain, Admiral Davis said, her voice growing cold, stay in that system. Document everything. I want evidence of every single crime they committed. As the transmission ended, Morrison looked around his bridge. His crew were good people. They had signed up to explore space, to make contact with alien life, to expand humanity's reach among the stars. They had not signed up for this, but Morrison could see something changing in their eyes, the same thing he felt changing in himself. The aliens had made a mistake. They thought they could slaughter humans without consequence. They thought no one would come looking. They were wrong. Ryan Parker rubbed his tired eyes and took another sip of coffee. He had been working for 16 straight hours, going through every piece of data recovered from New Haven Colony. As Earth Command's top intelligence analyst, it was his job to figure out who had committed this massacre and why. The answer was becoming clearer with each file he opened, and it made him sick. Dr. Foster, you need to see this, Ryan called to the xenobiologist working at the next terminal. Dr. Amy Foster looked up from her own analysis. She had been studying the alien ship designs and weapon signatures. Like Ryan, she looked exhausted and angry. What did you find? Amy asked, moving to look over Ryan's shoulder. Language patterns. The aliens left some communication logs in our networks when they hacked the colony systems. I have been running them through translation software. Ryan pointed to his screen. They call themselves the Korvathi. Amy leaned closer. Any indication of why they attacked? Ryan pulled up another file. That is where it gets worse. Look at this transmission between their ships during the attack. The translated text appeared on screen. Amy read it aloud. Cleansing Protocol 7 is proceeding as planned. The inferior beings show expected resistance patterns. Recommend full atmospheric sterilization to ensure complete removal. Removal, Amy repeated. Not defeat. Not conquest. Removal. It gets worse, Ryan said, opening more files. I found references to something called the Great Purification. Near as I can tell, the Korvathi have been doing this for thousands of years. Ryan pulled up a star chart marked with Korvathi symbols. Red zones covered dozens of star systems. Amy, I think they have been systematically wiping out every intelligent species they encounter. New Haven was not a war. It was just another day at the office for them. Amy stared at the chart. How many species? So far, I have found references to 17 different extinct civilizations. The Korvathi keep records like trophies. Ryan's voice was filled with disgust. They document each species they eliminate, how long it took, what methods worked best. They treat it like science. Down the hall, Ambassador Helen Carter was trying a different approach. She had been authorized to attempt contact with the Korvathi through deep space communications. So far, her attempts had been ignored. Finally, after 6 hours of trying, she got a response. The face that appeared on her screen was reptilian, with dark scales and cold yellow eyes. The creature spoke in a harsh, clicking language, but the translation software provided subtitles. Inferior human creature. Why do you disturb the Korvathi Empire? Helen took a deep breath and kept her voice calm. I am Ambassador Helen Carter, representing the human species. We wish to discuss the attack on our colony at New Haven. The alien's eyes narrowed. Attack? You speak incorrectly. There was no attack. There was cleansing. Your species established presence in a system marked for Korvathi expansion. Standard protocols were followed. Standard protocols involved murdering over 2 million civilians, including children, Helen replied, struggling to keep her anger in check. The Korvathi made a sound that might have been laughter. Your emotional weakness is noted. The Korvathi do not recognize the concept of civilians among inferior species. All non-Korvathi life in claimed systems must be removed for proper development. Helen felt cold rage building inside her. We had no military presence there. They were farmers and scientists. They posed no threat to anyone. Threat assessment is irrelevant. Purity of space is required for Korvathi expansion. Your species will remove itself from all systems within 50 light-years of Korvathi space, or additional cleansing operations will be necessary. And if we refuse? The alien's expression did not change. Refusal is not recognized. Compliance or cleansing are the only options. This communication is ended. The screen went black. Helen sat in silence for several minutes before activating her emergency channel to Earth Command. When Admiral Davis answered, Helen could barely speak. Admiral, they do not see us as intelligent life. They call what they did a cleansing operation. They said it was standard protocol. Standard protocol for what? For removing any non-Korvathi life from systems they want. They have given us an ultimatum. Leave 50 light-years of space around their territory or face more attacks. Admiral Davis was quiet for a moment. Anything else? They do not recognize surrender. They do not take prisoners. They just kill everything that is not them. Helen's voice shook with rage. "Admiral, they think we are insects to be exterminated." Back in the Intelligence Center, Ryan Parker was making more disturbing discoveries. He had found Korvathi historical records dating back thousands of years. "Amy, look at this," he called. "I found their historical archives. They have been expanding across the galaxy for over 10,000 years. Amy came over as Ryan displayed a timeline on his screen. Every few hundred years they encounter a new intelligent species. The pattern is always the same. First contact, followed immediately by what they call purification campaigns. Complete genocide, every single time. Ryan highlighted specific entries. The Zalani were a peaceful species of traders, wiped out 3,000 years ago. The Morphic Collective were artists and philosophers, gone 2,000 years ago. The list goes on and on. "How many?" Amy asked quietly. "By my count, at least. 47 different species. Billions upon billions of lives." Ryan's hands shook as he scrolled through the records. They keep detailed files on the most efficient methods of genocide. They rate different techniques based on speed and resource. "Cost!" Amy felt sick. "Have any species ever fought back?" Ryan checked the records. A few tried. The Korvathi classify resistance into levels. Most species never got past level 2 resistance before being eliminated. Only 3 ever reached level 5. What happened to those 3? Complete planetary sterilization. The Korvathi used their most extreme weapons to make sure those species could never recover or evolve again. General Stephen Hayes arrived at the Intelligence Center just as Ryan finished his latest analysis. Hayes was a career military officer who had seen combat on 6 different worlds. He was not easily shaken. "Give me the summary," Hayes ordered. Ryan stood up. "Sir, the Korvathi are an empire built on systematic genocide. They have been expanding for millennia by completely exterminating every intelligent species they encounter. They do not conquer or enslave. They just kill everything." "Military capabilities?" Amy answered this one. "Advanced technology significantly beyond ours. Their ships are larger and better armed. They have weapons we do not understand yet. Numbers? Unknown, but based on the territories they control, we estimate at least thousands of ships, possibly tens of thousands." Hayes nodded grimly. "And their plans for humanity?" Ryan pulled up the latest intelligence. "Complete extermination. They see us as another inferior species to be cleansed. The attack on New Haven was just the beginning." General Hayes stood in silence for several minutes, processing everything he had heard. Finally, he activated his communicator. "Get me President Pierce. Emergency priority. Tell him we need an immediate War Council meeting." As Hayes left the Intelligence Center, Ryan and Amy continued their work. Every new piece of data they found made the situation clearer and more terrifying. The Korvathi were not interested in negotiation or coexistence. They were killers who had turned genocide into an art form. They had destroyed dozens of civilizations and planned to add humanity to that list. But as Ryan read through more of their records, he noticed something the Korvathi had not considered. In all their thousands of years of expansion, they had never encountered a species quite like humanity. Every other species they had destroyed had been peaceful or only lightly defended. None had experience with total warfare. None had ever united their entire civilization for a single purpose. The Korvathi were about to learn something new. President Nathan Pierce walked into the emergency session of the Terran Defense Council with a grim expression. He had read the reports from New Haven Colony 3 times, and each reading had made him angrier. the most powerful leaders of humanity, were gathering in the secure conference room beneath the Swiss Alps, and they all knew why they were there. Fleet Admiral Carl Jensen was already seated at the massive round table, his uniform crisp despite having traveled halfway across the solar system in the past 12 hours. Dr. Peter Quinn, humanity's leading expert on alien technology, sat next to a stack of data tablets containing everything they knew about Corvathi capabilities. Colonel Beth Morgan, the military's top strategic planner, was reviewing deployment options on her portable screen. Director Alex Turner from Special Operations looked as calm as always, but Pierce could see the cold anger in his eyes. As the last council members took their seats, President Pierce stood and activated the room's security systems. No information from this meeting would leave without his personal authorization. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here because humanity faces the greatest threat in our history, Pierce began. The Corvathi Empire has committed genocide against 2.5 million of our people. They have made it clear they intend to do the same to all of humanity. Admiral Jensen leaned forward. Mr. President, I have reviewed all available intelligence. The Corvathi possess superior technology and significantly larger numbers. In a conventional war, we would lose. Then we do not fight a conventional war, Colonel Morgan replied firmly. We have advantages they do not expect. Dr. Quinn cleared his throat. If I may, the Corvathi technology is advanced, but it follows predictable patterns. They have been using the same basic designs for thousands of years. They have never needed to innovate because they have never faced serious resistance. Director Turner spoke up for the first time. The intelligence reports show they view other species as insects. They do not study their enemies or adapt their tactics. They just apply overwhelming force until everything dies. President Pierce nodded. What are you suggesting? Colonel Morgan stood and activated the holographic display in the center of the table. A three-dimensional map of known space appeared, with Corvathi territory marked in red and human colonies in blue. Sir, the Corvathi have made the same mistake every empire in human history has made. They think superior numbers and technology guarantee victory. They have never fought humans. Explain, Pierce ordered. Humans have something no other species the Corvathi have encountered possesses. Experience with total warfare. We have fought wars where entire nations mobilized every resource for complete victory. We understand concepts like scorched earth tactics, asymmetric warfare, and acceptable losses. Admiral Jensen pulled up fleet readiness reports. Our current military consists of approximately 800 combat vessels, ranging from destroyers to dreadnoughts. Intelligence estimates the Corvathi have at least 10,000 ships. Numbers alone do not win wars, Morgan replied. The Corvathi expect us to fight like every other species they have conquered. They expect us to defend our colonies and fight conventional battles. We are not going to do that. Dr. Quinn activated his own presentation. I have been analyzing Corvathi ship designs and weapon systems. They are powerful but inflexible. Their ships are built for orbital bombardment and overwhelming firepower, not ship-to-ship combat against adaptive enemies. What are you proposing? President Pierce asked. Colonel Morgan highlighted several star systems on the map. We evacuate all border colonies immediately. Give the Corvathi nothing to attack except empty space. Meanwhile, we convert our entire industrial base to military production. Every shipyard, every factory, every mining operation becomes part of the war effort. Director Turner nodded. My people can conduct deep penetration raids into Corvathi territory. Hit their supply lines, destroy their infrastructure, make them pay for every light year they advance. Admiral Jensen looked skeptical. Even with full mobilization, we would still be outnumbered 10-1. Then we change the rules, Morgan replied. The Korvathi fight wars of extermination, so we do the same. No prisoners, no mercy, no rules of engagement. We make this so costly for them that they regret ever hearing the word human. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. President Pierce looked around the table at the faces of humanity's leaders. You are talking about total warfare. No limits. No restraints. Yes, sir, Morgan replied without hesitation. The Korvathi have made this a war of extinction. Either they destroy us completely or we destroy them completely. There is no middle ground. Dr. Quinn activated another display showing Korvathi psychology profiles. The intelligence reports indicate they have never faced an enemy that fought back effectively. They are used to quick, easy victories against defenseless populations. A long, bloody conflict would be completely outside their experience. Director Turner leaned back in his chair. Sir, the Korvathi think they are apex predators. We need to show them what real predators look like. President Pierce was quiet for several minutes, considering everything he had heard. Finally, he spoke. Admiral Jensen, how long would it take to convert our entire fleet to combat configuration? 6 months for major retrofits, sir. But we could begin operations with existing forces immediately. Dr. Quinn, can we match their technology? Not. Immediately. But we can develop countermeasures. Human innovation has always been our greatest strength. Give our engineers a clear enemy to target, and they will find ways to kill it. Colonel Morgan, what would total mobilization look like? Morgan had clearly been preparing for this question. Every human world contributes everything they have. All civilian ship construction stops. All mining operations focus on military materials. Every university research program gets redirected to weapons development. Every person becomes part of the war effort. The economic cost would be enormous, pointed out Finance Minister Sarah Walsh, who had been silent until now. The cost of losing would be extinction, Morgan replied bluntly. President Pierce stood and walked to the window overlooking the mountain valley below. Somewhere out there, beyond the blue sky and white clouds, the Korvathi were planning the next phase of humanity's destruction. Director Turner, what kind of operations are you considering? Turner smiled grimly. The Korvathi have never dealt with human special operations. They do not guard against infiltration or sabotage because no other species has ever tried it. We can hit targets they never expect to be vulnerable. Such as command centers, supply depots, industrial facilities. We make them afraid to leave. Their home systems undefended. Admiral Jensen was reviewing tactical reports. If we are going to do this, we need to act fast. Intelligence suggests they are preparing follow-up attacks on 3 more human colonies. President Pierce returned to his seat and looked around the table one more time. These people were asking him to authorize something unprecedented in human history, the complete mobilization of their entire species for a war of extermination. But the alternative was to let the Korvathi methodically murder every human in the galaxy. I want recommendations from each of you within 24 hours, Pierce announced. Full mobilization plans, military strategies, and timelines. We are going to show the Korvathi that they made a fatal mistake when they decided to commit genocide against humanity. Colonel Morgan leaned forward. Sir, what are our rules of engagement? President Pierce's expression hardened. The Korvathi showed no mercy to our civilians. They targeted children, hospitals, schools. They chose to make this a war without limits. He paused, meeting the eyes of every person at the table. Extinction is the only option. The room fell silent as the weight of those words settled on everyone present. Humanity was about to embark on something that would change them forever. They were going to become exactly what was necessary to survive. The Korvathi had awakened something they did not understand. They thought they were facing another weak species to be casually exterminated. They were about to learn the difference. Victoria Stone stood in the control center of the Luna Industrial Complex, watching as massive display screens showed the transformation of human civilization. As the newly appointed Director of War Production, she had been given one of the most important jobs in human history. Convert every factory, shipyard, and mining operation to support the war effort. The numbers scrolling across her screens told an incredible story. In just 3 weeks since President Pierce had authorized total mobilization, humanity had begun the largest industrial conversion in galactic history. Status report, Victoria called to her chief of operations. Tony Rodriguez looked up from his engineering console. Ma'am, we have completed conversion of 68% of civilian shipyards to military production. The Mars shipyards are already turning out destroyer hulls at triple their previous rate. Victoria nodded approvingly. What about the new weapon systems? That is where it gets interesting, Tony replied with a grim smile. Our engineers have been studying Korvathi technology from the New Haven attack. We are developing countermeasures they have never seen before. Tony activated a holographic display showing new ship designs. The Korvathi build their ships for overwhelming firepower and heavy armor. They are designed to crush enemies that fight conventionally. So we are not going to fight conventionally. The display showed sleek, fast ships bristling with unusual weapon arrays. These are hunter-killers. Fast, agile, built for hit-and-run attacks. Instead of trying to match their firepower, we hit them where they are weak. Victoria studied the designs. How many can we build? With full industrial conversion, we can produce 10 hunter-killers for every traditional cruiser we were building before. Numbers become our advantage instead of theirs. Across the solar system, Commander Katie Walsh was overseeing the formation of the human expeditionary fleet. The massive space dock orbiting Jupiter had become the staging area for the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. Katie walked the observation deck of the command station, watching as newly constructed warships took their places in formation. Each one represented thousands of hours of human labor and determination. Admiral Morrison is here for the briefing, her aide announced. Jake Morrison had been promoted after his discovery of the New Haven massacre. Now he commanded the first strike group that would carry the war to the Korvathi. Katie, the fleet looks impressive, Morrison said as he joined her on the observation deck. 800 combat vessels ready for deployment, Katie replied. Another 1,000 in various stages of construction. The Korvathi think they outnumber us 10 to 1. By the time we are finished, we will outnumber them. Morrison looked skeptical. Can we build ships fast enough? Intelligence reports suggest they are preparing another attack. That is the beauty of human industrial capacity, Katie explained. The Korvathi have been a stable empire for thousands of years. They build ships slowly, carefully, with an eye toward permanence. We build ships fast, cheap, and in massive quantities. She pointed to the construction bays where sparks flew from welding operations. Every human world is contributing. The asteroid miners are working triple shifts. The orbital platforms are churning out hull plating 24 hours a day. Even the farming colonies are converting greenhouse facilities to electronics manufacturing. Morrison was impressed despite himself. How long can we sustain this pace? As long as necessary, Katie replied firmly. The Korvathi made one crucial mistake. They attacked our civilians. Now every human in the galaxy has a personal stake in this war. On Earth, Dr. Frank Barnes was conducting a very different kind of research. As humanity's leading expert in alien psychology, he had been tasked with understanding Korvathi behavior and finding weaknesses to exploit. "Julie, come look at this," Frank called to his research assistant. Julie Gray had been analyzing captured Korvathi communications for patterns and psychological indicators. What they were finding was changing how humanity planned to fight this war. The Korvathi have never experienced fear, Frank explained as Julie reviewed his latest analysis. In thousands of years of expansion, they have never encountered serious resistance. Fear is not part of their psychological framework. "What does that mean for us?" Julie asked. "It means we can use fear as a weapon. The Korvathi do not know how to process being hunted instead of hunting. They do not understand concepts like guerrilla warfare or psychological operations." Frank pulled up communication intercepts from Korvathi ships. "Look at these transmissions from their border patrols. They are reporting anomalous behavior from human settlements. They expect us to cower and hide while they prepare their next attack. But we are not cowering." "Exactly. We are evacuating civilians and moving them to safety, but we are also leaving behind some very unpleasant surprises. Our special operations teams have been busy." Julie read through the reports. "Automated weapon systems, booby traps, false signals designed to waste their time and resources." "More than that," Frank replied. "We are teaching them that every human system they approach might be dangerous. They are used to easy conquests. Now they have to worry about what might be waiting for them." Frank activated another display showing psychological profiles. "The Korvathi are apex predators who have never been prey. We are going to reverse that relationship, make them afraid to advance, afraid to separate their forces, afraid to do anything except huddle together for protection." Meanwhile, Director Alex Turner was briefing his special operations teams in a secure facility on Ganymede. The men and women gathered in the briefing room were the best humanity had to offer: engineers, soldiers, pilots, and saboteurs who would carry the war directly to the Korvathi. "Your mission is simple," Turner explained to the assembled teams. "Make the Korvathi afraid to leave their home systems, hit their supply lines, destroy their forward bases, eliminate their leadership." Commander Rachel Hayes, leader of the 1st Deep Strike Team, raised her hand. "Sir, what are our rules of engagement?" Turner's expression was cold. "There are no rules. The Korvathi chose to fight a war of extermination. We will give them exactly what they asked for." He activated a holographic map showing Korvathi territory. "Intelligence has identified 17 major supply depots, 12 command centers, and 43 industrial facilities within striking range. Your job is to make all of them disappear." Lieutenant Bobby Wright, one of Turner's demolitions experts, studied the target list. "Sir, some of these facilities are in heavily defended systems." "Then you will have to be creative," Turner replied. "The Korvathi do not expect human infiltration because no other species has ever tried it. Use that advantage." Turner highlighted specific targets. "Priority 1 is their command structure. The Korvathi operate with rigid hierarchy. Disrupt their leadership and their forces become confused and ineffective." "What about civilians?" asked another team member. Turner paused. "Intelligence reports indicate the Korvathi do not have civilians as we understand the term. Their entire society is organized around conquest and expansion. Every Korvathi is part of their war machine. The implications hung heavy in the air. This would not be a war with innocent bystanders. Back on Luna, Victoria Stone received a communication from President Pierce himself. Victoria, how long until we reach full war production? Sir, at current rates we will achieve maximum output in 6 months, but we are already producing at levels the Korvathi cannot match. Explain. Victoria pulled up industrial statistics. The Korvathi economy is designed for stability and slow growth. They build things to last for centuries. We are building things to win a war. Our ships may not last as long, but we can build 10 of them in the time it takes them to build one. Quality versus quantity? Yes, sir. But quantity has a quality all its own. When they send 10 ships against our 100, numbers matter more than individual superiority. President Pierce nodded approvingly. What do you need? More workers, more raw materials, and more time. The Korvathi are reportedly preparing another attack. If we can delay them for just a few more months. Leave that to Admiral Morrison and Director Turner, Pierce replied. Your job is to make sure we have enough ships to finish this war. As the communication ended, Victoria looked out at the bustling activity of the Luna facility. Humans were working around the clock, motivated by images of the New Haven massacre and determination to prevent it from happening again. The Korvathi had expected humanity to collapse in fear after their demonstration of power. Instead, they had awakened something unprecedented. An entire species united in purpose, working together with single-minded determination. Humanity was mobilizing for total war. And for the first time in Korvathi history, they would face an enemy that refused to die quietly. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the massive Korvathi outpost grow larger on the main screen. After months of preparation, humanity was finally ready to strike back. The outpost controlled the approaches to 3 human colonies, and intelligence indicated it was being used as a staging area for the next wave of genocidal attacks. Daniel, report. Morrison ordered his tactical officer. Lieutenant Commander Daniel Price studied his displays. Sir, the outpost matches intelligence reports. 12 heavy defense platforms, approximately 40 ships of various classes, and what appears to be a command center built into the largest asteroid. Morrison nodded. Tracy, any response to our communications? Communications Officer Tracy Bell shook her head. Nothing, sir. They are ignoring all attempts at contact, just like at New Haven. Morrison was not surprised. The Korvathi had demonstrated they were not interested in talking. This would be settled with weapons. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. You know what these creatures did to our people at New Haven? Today we begin making them pay for that crime. No mercy, no prisoners, no quarter given. Extinction is the only option. Across the human fleet, acknowledgments came back from dozens of ship captains. The anger in their voices was clear. Every human in the fleet had seen the recordings from New Haven Colony. They knew exactly what they were fighting against. Fleet Tactical, this is Morrison. Execute Attack Plan Alpha. What happened next had never been seen in Korvathi space before. Instead of advancing in traditional formation for a conventional battle, the human ships scattered like a swarm of angry insects. Fast attack craft darted between the defense platforms, too quick and agile for the heavy weapons to track effectively. Destroyer squadrons used coordinated hit-and-run attacks, striking at weak points and then disappearing before the Korvathi could respond. On the Korvathi command ship, War Commander Zekthai watched in confusion as his forces struggled to engage. The human fleet, Tactical Prime, explain this behavior, Zekthai demanded. War Commander, the humans are not following standard attack patterns. They refuse to engage in proper formation combat. Their ships are too fast and too numerous for our defensive systems, Zekthai hissed in annoyance. Increase firepower. Destroy them with overwhelming force. We are trying, War Commander, but they will not stay still long enough for concentrated fire. This was exactly what humanity had planned for. The Korvathi expected their enemies to line up and trade shots like traditional space fleets. They had never faced opponents who used speed and numbers to overwhelm defensive systems. Back on the Retribution, Morrison watched as human ships swarmed around the outpost like angry hornets. Daniel, status report. Sir, we have taken out 8 of their defense platforms and disabled at least 15 ships. Casualties are light on our side. What about their command center? Special operations teams are in position. Director Turner's people managed to infiltrate the asteroid during the initial confusion. Deep inside the Korvathi command asteroid, Colonel Sam Rivers and his team moved through corridors that had never seen human feet before. The Korvathi had not even considered the possibility of infiltration. Charges are set, reported Sergeant Lisa Chang over the radio. We can take out their command structure and main communications array. Do it, Rivers ordered. The explosions ripped through the heart of the Korvathi outpost. Suddenly, the coordinated defense became chaos as individual ships and platforms found themselves without orders or communication. On his command ship, War Commander Zekthai felt the deck shake under his feet as explosions echoed through space. Report, he demanded. War Commander, the command asteroid has been destroyed. We are receiving no orders from Central Command. Our communications are down. Zekthai stared at the tactical display in disbelief. In thousands of years of Korvathi expansion, no enemy had ever successfully attacked their command structures. How had these primitive humans penetrated their defenses? All ships fall back to secondary positions, regroup for counterattack. But the humans were not finished. As the surviving Korvathi ships tried to withdraw, human hunter-killer squadrons pursued them. The fast, agile human ships darted in and out, picking off stragglers and preventing any organized retreat. Morrison watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. Tracy, patch me through to the surviving Korvathi ships. Channel open, sir. Korvathi forces, this is Admiral Morrison of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. You have 30 seconds to surrender before we destroy you completely. The response came from War Commander Zekthai himself. Human creature, the Korvathi do not surrender to inferior species. We will destroy you as we destroyed your colony. Morrison had expected this response. Then you will die as you lived, without honor. What followed was not a battle, but an execution. The scattered Korvathi forces found themselves overwhelmed by superior numbers and tactics they could not understand. Ship after ship disappeared in flashes of fire and debris. War Commander Zekthai's vessel was the last to die. As human ships closed in from all sides, he sent a final transmission to the nearest Korvathi fleet. This is War Commander Zekthai to all Korvathi forces. The humans, they fight like demons. They show no fear, no mercy. They coordinate attacks in ways we have never seen. They have destroyed our entire outpost. No survivors. The transmission cut off as the command ship exploded under concentrated human fire. On the Retribution, Morrison watched the last Korvathi vessel die. Around him, his bridge crew stood in silence. They had just won humanity's first major victory against the species that had committed genocide against their people. Daniel, final casualty report. Sir, we lost 6 ships with approximately 400 crew members. The Korvathi lost everything. Complete destruction of their outpost and all defending forces. Morrison nodded grimly. 400 human lives for several thousand Korvathi. It was a good ratio, but those 400 people had families and friends who would mourn them. Tracy, get me Fleet Command. Tell them the outpost is destroyed and the shipping lanes are clear. But Morrison was already thinking about what would happen next. The Korvathi would receive reports of this defeat. For the first time in their history, they would learn that one of their outposts had been completely destroyed by an enemy force. In the deeper regions of Korvathi space, Fleet Marshal Vorthak received War Commander Zekthai's final transmission with shock and disbelief. "Play it again," he ordered. The communication technician replayed the desperate message. Vorthak listened to descriptions of human tactics that made no sense according to traditional Korvathi military doctrine. "They coordinate attacks in ways we have never seen," Zekthai's voice repeated. "They show no fear, no mercy." Vorthak had commanded Korvathi fleets for over 2 centuries. He had overseen the extermination of 6 different species. None of them had ever destroyed a major Korvathi installation. Intelligence prime, analysis of human capabilities. "Fleet Marshal, our previous estimates appear to have been incorrect. The humans possess significantly more advanced tactics than anticipated. Their technology is inferior, but they compensate with superior numbers and unconventional strategies." Vorthak studied the tactical reports. "How many ships did they deploy?" "Estimated at between 80 and 100 vessels of various classes." "Against our 40 ships and 12 defense platforms?" "Correct, Fleet Marshal." Vorthak was troubled. The Korvathi had always won through superior technology and firepower. They sent overwhelming force against weak enemies and achieved quick, decisive victories, but the humans seemed to be using different rules. "Prepare a response fleet. I want 200 ships ready for deployment within 10 rotations." "Yes, Fleet Marshal. Target selection?" Vorthak looked at the star charts showing human territory. "They destroyed one of our outposts. We will destroy 10 of their colonies in response. Show them the price of resistance." But Vorthak did not know that humanity was listening to his communications. Deep in Korvathi space, Director Turner's special operations teams had placed monitoring devices on several major installations. Within hours, human intelligence knew about the planned retaliatory strike. And Admiral Morrison was already moving his enlarged fleet to intercept them. The Korvathi thought they were dealing with just another species to be exterminated. They still believed that overwhelming force would bring quick victory. They were about to learn that humans had been preparing for this war much longer than they realized. Every tactic, every strategy, every weapon had been designed with one goal in mind: the complete and total extinction of the Korvathi Empire. The war was just beginning, and humanity intended to finish it. Colonel Sam Rivers crouched in the shadows of a Korvathi supply depot, watching enemy soldiers move supplies between massive warehouses. This facility supplied 3 different Korvathi fleets, and its destruction would cripple their operations in this sector for months. "Positions?" Rivers whispered into his communicator. "Team Alpha in position," came the reply from Sergeant Mark Torres. "Demo charges ready on the main fuel storage." "Team Beta ready," reported Lieutenant Jenny Walsh. "We have eyes on the command center." Rivers smiled grimly. The Korvathi still had not adapted to the idea that humans could infiltrate their territory. This depot had minimal security because they never expected enemies to reach this far behind their lines. "Execute in 3, 2, 1. The explosions lit up the night as massive fuel tanks erupted in sheets of flame. Secondary explosions followed as stored ammunition cooked off. Within minutes, the entire facility was a raging inferno. Rivers and his teams melted back into the darkness, leaving no trace they had ever been there. By the time Korvathi reinforcements arrived, the special operations teams were already moving toward their next target. 2 star systems away, Ambassador Helen Carter was conducting a very different kind of mission. She sat across from a captured Korvathi officer, trying once more to understand their mindset. The prisoner, who called himself Sub-Commander Gethra, had been taken during a raid on a Korvathi communications station. He was the first living Korvathi that humans had been able to interrogate. "Why do you kill civilians?" Helen asked directly. Gethra looked at her with cold reptilian eyes. "You still do not understand. There are no civilians among inferior species. You are all threats to Korvathi purity. Children, medical personnel, teachers, all threats," Gethra replied without emotion. "Your young grow to become adults. Your healers preserve inferior genetics. Your educators spread contaminating ideas." Helen felt sick, but pressed on. "What would it take for the Korvathi to make peace with humanity?" Gethra made the harsh sound that served as Korvathi laughter. "Peace requires the absence of conflict. Conflict ends when all non-Korvathi life is removed from claimed space. And if we refuse to be removed, then you will be processed like all the others before you." Helen terminated the interview and walked to the observation deck of the orbital station. Below, Earth turned peacefully in space, but she knew this tranquility was temporary. The Korvathi would never stop coming until they were dead or humanity was extinct. She activated her communicator. "Get me Director Turner. I have new intelligence on Korvathi psychology. In the depths of space, intelligence operative Chad Lewis monitored Korvathi fleet movements from his concealed observation post. The data he was gathering would help human forces intercept and destroy enemy formations before they could reach human colonies. "Control, this is Shadow 7, Chad reported. "Korvathi Fleet Group Tertius is moving toward the Proxima system. Estimated arrival in 6 days. Copy, Shadow 7. Admiral Morrison is moving to intercept." Chad watched the alien ships pass by his hidden position. Each one represented thousands of tons of metal and technology designed for genocide, but they also represented an opportunity. As the Korvathi fleet moved away, Chad activated his ship's stealth systems and began following at a safe distance. His job was to monitor their movements and relay targeting information to human attack squadrons. The Korvathi had no idea they were being hunted. On the bridge of the UES Retribution, Admiral Morrison studied the tactical situation with his staff. Intelligence reports showed Korvathi forces were becoming increasingly paranoid and defensive. "They are starting to adapt," reported Captain Lisa Brooks, his intelligence officer. "Increased patrols, better security at major installations, more defensive formations." Morrison nodded. "Good. Fear makes them predictable. When they concentrate their forces for defense, they give us opportunities to attack elsewhere." Lieutenant Commander Daniel Price highlighted several star systems on the tactical display. "Sir, we have identified 17 major Korvathi installations that are now lightly defended due to their force redeployments." "Emma, what about civilian evacuation?" Morrison asked his logistics coordinator. Emma Taylor reported from her station. "All human colonies within 50 light-years of Korvathi space have been evacuated. We have also established hidden supply caches throughout the border regions. Morrison was pleased. So if they attack our former colonies, they will find empty worlds and no targets worth their time. Exactly, sir. Meanwhile, our mobile forces can strike at targets throughout their territory. Morrison activated the fleet communication system. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. The Korvathi are learning that aggression has consequences. Every supply depot they lose weakens their ability to conduct genocide. Every command post we destroy reduces their coordination. Every ship we kill is one less weapon pointed at human families. The response from his fleet was immediate and enthusiastic. Morrison could hear the determination in every voice. Deep in Korvathi space, psychologist Dr. Monica King was analyzing intercepted enemy communications for signs of psychological stress. What she was finding confirmed humanity's strategy was working. The fear responses are becoming more pronounced, she reported to Director Turner via encrypted channel. Korvathi commanders are requesting additional security forces. They are changing patrol patterns randomly. Some are even abandoning forward positions without orders. Turner smiled with satisfaction. How long before their command structure starts breaking down? Hard to say, but the pattern is clear. They have never experienced sustained pressure like this. Their military doctrine has no provisions for fighting an enemy that strikes everywhere and nowhere. Dr. King pulled up psychological profiles. The Korvathi mind is not equipped to handle the concept of being hunted. They are apex predators who have never been prey. This reversal of roles is causing significant stress throughout their command structure. Meanwhile, civilian coordinator Emma Taylor was overseeing something the galaxy had never seen before: the complete mobilization of an entire species for total warfare. Every human world contributed to the war effort. Mining colonies stripped, asteroids bare to provide raw materials. Agricultural worlds converted farmland to weapons factories. Even the most remote research stations had been turned into communications relay points. Production reports, Emma called to her staff. Ma'am, current output is 1,200 new combat vessels per month and rising. Ammunition production is exceeding consumption by 40%. We now have enough ships to replace our entire fleet 3 times over. Emma nodded approvingly. And personnel? Every human colony has exceeded recruitment quotas. We have volunteers, requesting combat assignments faster than we can train them. The numbers told an incredible story. Humanity had transformed from a peaceful confederation of colonies into the most efficient war machine the galaxy had ever seen. In a secure bunker on Mars, President Pierce reviewed casualty reports with grim satisfaction. Human losses were significant, but sustainable. Korvathi losses were catastrophic and accelerating. Current ratio? He asked General Hayes. For every human killed, we eliminate approximately 15 Korvathi. More importantly, we are destroying their infrastructure faster than they can rebuild it. Pierce studied the strategic overview. How long can they sustain these losses? Unknown. Sir, no species has ever fought the Korvathi this effectively. We are in uncharted territory. Pierce nodded. Then we continue the pressure until they break. But the Korvathi were not ready to break yet. In their core systems, Fleet Marshal Vorthok was preparing humanity's greatest test yet. He had assembled the largest battle fleet in Korvathi history. Over 5,000 ships with weapons capable of sterilizing entire star systems. Target? Asked his tactical coordinator. Vorthok studied the star charts showing human space. Earth. The human homeworld. If we destroy their place of origin, their resistance will collapse. What Vorthak did not know was that humanity had been preparing for exactly this scenario. Hidden throughout the Sol system were defensive installations that would turn Earth's space into a killing field. And Admiral Morrison was already moving to intercept the Korvathi fleet long before it could reach humanity's birth world. The Korvathi thought they were about to deliver a decisive blow that would end human resistance. Instead, they were sailing into the largest trap in military history. Humanity had been patient, methodical, and utterly ruthless in its prosecution of this war. Now the Korvathi would learn the final lesson about fighting humans. When you threaten their home, they stop holding back entirely. Fleet Marshal Vorthak stood on the command deck of his flagship, watching the largest armada in Korvathi history advance toward human space. 5,000 ships stretched across space in perfect formation, their dark hulls gleaming with the promise of destruction. "Navigation Prime, report," Vorthak commanded. "Fleet Marshal, we will reach the human homeworld system in 47 rotations. All ships report ready for final extermination protocols." Vorthak nodded with satisfaction. The humans had proven more troublesome than expected, but this massive fleet would end their resistance permanently. Once Earth was destroyed, the scattered human colonies would surrender or be hunted down one by one. Communications Prime, transmit final warning to human space. The message went out across all frequencies. Human creatures, your homeworld will be cleansed in 47 rotations. Surrender now and face quick processing. Resist and face prolonged suffering before inevitable death. What the Korvathi did not know was that Admiral Morrison had been tracking their fleet movements for weeks. Deep space monitoring stations had detected the massive force buildup, and humanity had prepared accordingly. "Admiral, we have them," reported Captain Lisa Brooks from the bridge of the UES Retribution. 5,000 ships, just as intelligence predicted. Morrison studied the tactical display showing the approaching Korvathi armada. It was indeed the largest space fleet ever assembled, but humanity was ready. "Daniel, status of our forces?" "Lieutenant." Commander Daniel Price coordinated the response from multiple command centers. "Sir, we have 8,000 ships positioned along their route. The Korvathi are sailing into the largest ambush in galactic history." Morrison activated fleet communications. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. The Korvathi are coming to destroy our homeworld. They think their numbers will guarantee victory. Today we show them what happens when you threaten Earth." Across human space, the response was immediate. Every ship, every station, every armed platform prepared for the battle that would decide humanity's fate. Engineer Bobby Wright worked frantically in the Luna Weapons Laboratories, putting final touches on humanity's secret weapon. For months, his team had been developing something the Korvathi had never encountered. "Status on the planet crackers?" asked Dr. Wendy Clark, the project's biological warfare specialist. "Ready for deployment," Bobby replied grimly. 12 devices, each capable of destabilizing a planet's core. The Korvathi homeworlds will not survive what is coming. Dr. Clark reviewed her own preparations. "Biological agents are ready as well, targeted specifically for Korvathi physiology, 100% lethal, zero effect on any other known life forms." Bobby paused in his work. "Are we really going to do this? Exterminate an entire species?" Dr. Clark looked at him with cold eyes. "They made the choice when they committed genocide against New Haven Colony. Now we finish what they started." The first contact between the fleets came at the edge of the Centauri system. Commander Rick Stone led the initial human strike force. 1,200 fast attack vessels designed to harass and delay the advancing Corvathi armada. All ships, execute harassment protocol Delta, Stone ordered. Human ships swarmed around the Corvathi formation like angry wasps, striking at the edges and then darting away before the heavy weapons could respond. It was the same tactic that had worked at the first Corvathi outpost, but on a massive scale. Fleet Marshal Vorth Ak watched in growing frustration as his perfect formation began to break apart under the constant attacks. Tactical Prime, eliminate these pests. We are trying, Fleet Marshal, but they refuse to engage in proper formation combat. Our heavy weapons cannot track targets moving so erratically, Vorthak hissed in annoyance. Then increase firepower, overwhelm them with sheer volume. But the human ships continued their hit-and-run attacks, picking off stragglers and preventing any organized Corvathi response. What should have been a glorious advance toward Earth became a running battle that cost the Corvathi dozens of ships, without any meaningful human losses. Communications Officer Nancy Davis monitored Corvathi transmissions from her position aboard a stealth reconnaissance ship. What she heard confirmed that humanity's strategy was working. Command, this is Listener 7. Corvathi communications are showing increased stress indicators. Multiple ships are requesting permission to break formation and engage individual human vessels. Copy, Listener 7. Continue monitoring. Nancy smiled as she listened to the growing confusion in Corvathi ranks. They were apex predators who had never learned to deal with prey that fought back effectively. Deep in human space, President Pierce met with his war cabinet for what might be the final time. The massive Corvathi fleet was still advancing despite heavy losses, and everyone knew the real battle was yet to come. Final numbers? Pierce asked. Admiral Jensen consulted his reports. Sir, the Corvathi have lost approximately 400 ships to our harassment attacks. That still leaves them with over 4,000 combat vessels. And our forces? 8,000 ships ready for direct engagement, plus all planetary defense systems. The Sol system has been turned into the most heavily defended space in galactic history. General Hayes leaned forward. Sir, we need to discuss what happens if they break through our defenses. Pierce's expression hardened. They will not break through. But if they somehow do, we activate the planet crackers and biological weapons, complete extinction of their species. The room fell silent. Everyone present understood what that meant. Humanity was prepared to commit genocide to prevent genocide. Any word from their government? Pierce asked. Ambassador Carter shook her head. Nothing. They refuse all communication except demands for surrender. They see this as just another extermination campaign. Then we give them exactly what they deserve, Pierce replied coldly. The decisive battle began as the Corvathi fleet entered the outer edge of the Sol system. What followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Human ships attacked. From every direction, using the system's asteroid belts and planetary bodies as cover, hidden weapon platforms revealed themselves and opened fire at point-blank range. The space around Earth became a three-dimensional battlefield where death came from all angles. Admiral Morrison coordinated the defense from the Retribution, watching as his carefully planned strategy unfolded. Status report, he ordered. Sir, the Corvathi have lost over 1,000 ships since entering the system. Our losses are approximately 300 vessels. Morrison nodded grimly. Not good enough. We need to hurt them more. He activated special communications. All stealth units, execute Operation Thunderbolt throughout the battle zone. Hidden. Human ships suddenly appeared in the middle of Corvathi formations, firing at close range before disappearing again. The Corvathi, found themselves under attack by enemies they could not see coming. Fleet Marshal Vorthak realized his perfect plan was collapsing into chaos. His massive fleet was being systematically destroyed by an enemy that refused to fight by traditional rules. "Fleet Marshal," his tactical coordinator reported, "we have lost over 2,000 ships. Human resistance is far beyond our projections." Vorthak stared at the tactical display in disbelief. "This is impossible. No species has ever resisted this effectively." "Fleet Marshal, perhaps we should consider withdrawal and regrouping." "No," Vorthak snarled. "We destroy the human homeworld or die trying. All ships, maximum firepower. Burn." Everything. What followed was the most brutal space battle in galactic history. Thousands of ships died in minutes as both sides threw everything they had into the fight, space filled with debris and radiation as planet-killing weapons discharged. At close range, but gradually, inevitably, human numbers and tactics began to tell. The Korvathi fleet, designed for overwhelming isolated enemies, could not adapt to sustained combat against a prepared defender. When the final Korvathi ship exploded in Earth's outer atmosphere, the silence was deafening. Humanity had won its greatest victory, but at terrible cost. Admiral Morrison looked at the casualty reports with heavy heart. "Final numbers?" "Sir, we lost 3,000 ships and approximately 400,000 crew members. The Korvathi lost their entire fleet. No survivors." Morrison nodded slowly. Nearly 500,000 humans had died defending their homeworld, but Earth still existed, and the Korvathi threat to human space had been broken. Now came the hardest part of the war: hunting down the remaining Korvathi in their core systems and ensuring they could never threaten anyone again. The decision had already been made. Extinction was the only option. The fortress world of Korvathes hung in space like a dying ember, its once mighty orbital defenses reduced to twisted metal and debris. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the final stronghold of the Korvathi Empire prepare for its last stand. 3 years had passed since the great battle at Earth. 3 years of systematic hunting that had driven the Korvathi from system after system, world after world, until only this one fortress remained. Less than 10,000 Korvathi survivors huddled on the planet below, the last remnants of an empire that had once controlled hundreds of star systems. "Final scan results," Morrison ordered. Captain Lisa Brooks looked up from her sensor station. "Sir, we detect approximately 8,000 Korvathi life signs concentrated in the planetary fortress. No operational ships, no functional orbital defenses. They are completely surrounded." Morrison nodded grimly. It had taken the combined might of humanity 3 years to reach this moment. Every Korvathi world had been systematically cleansed, every ship hunted down and destroyed, every attempt at negotiation or surrender rejected. "Any response to our communications?" "Nothing, sir. They stopped responding to hails 6 months ago." Morrison was not surprised. The Korvathi had learned too late that humanity did not forgive genocide. They had awakened something they could not understand or control. Behind him, the elevator doors opened to admit President Pierce himself. The leader of humanity had come to witness the end personally, along with the original crew members who had discovered the New Haven massacre. "Mr. President," Morrison said, turning to greet him. Pierce walked to the main viewing port and stared down at the planet below. "Is it finished?" "Almost, sir. Dr. Foster's teams have completed the biological warfare preparations. Engineer Wright's planet crackers are in position. When you give the order, The Korvathi species will cease to exist. Pierce was quiet for several minutes, contemplating the magnitude of what was about to happen. Humanity was about to deliberately exterminate an entire intelligent species. Any word from their leadership? Morrison shook his head. The Korvathi Supreme Council died when we destroyed their homeworld 18 months ago. What remains down there are military survivors and scattered civilians. Civilians, Pierce repeated. Do they have families, children? Dr. Amy Foster, who had worked tirelessly to develop the biological weapons, stepped forward. Sir, our analysis indicates the Korvathi do not organize their society the way humans do. Their young are raised communally and trained for military service from birth. Every Korvathi is part of their war machine. Pierce nodded slowly. The intelligence reports had been clear. Korvathi society was built entirely around conquest and extermination. They had no concept of peaceful coexistence. Communications officer Tracy Bell suddenly spoke up. Sir, I am receiving a transmission from the planet. Put it through, Morrison ordered. The face that appeared on the main screen was clearly Korvathi, but unlike any they had seen before. This one looked old, with scarred scales and tired yellow eyes. I am Elder Vashkorth, last of the Korvathi. High Council, I speak for the survivors. President Pierce stepped forward. I am President Pierce of the Human Federation. Have you contacted us to surrender? The old Korvathi made a sound that might have been bitter laughter. Surrender? We do not know this concept. We contact you to understand why you continue this pursuit when victory is already yours. Pierce felt cold anger rise in his chest. You committed genocide against our people. You murdered entire worlds of civilians. Did you expect us to forget? We followed natural law, Vashkorth replied without emotion. The strong eliminate the weak. We have done this for 10,000 years. You have proven stronger. We accept extinction. Accept it? Pierce said incredulously. You think this is just natural law? What else could it be? You are apex predators, as we were. You eliminate threats to your territory and resources. This is the way of all successful species. Dr. Foster stepped into view of the communicator. Elder Vashkorth, we did not start this war for territory or resources. We are here because you committed an act of evil that cannot be forgiven. The Korvathi elder looked confused. Evil. We do not understand this concept. We eliminated competing life forms. You are now eliminating us. The cycle continues. Morrison found himself speaking. You killed children, innocent people who had never threatened you, people who were trying to build better lives for their families. Immature life. Forms grow to become threats, Vashkorth replied matter-of-factly. Your species has demonstrated this truth by becoming our destroyers. We should have been more thorough in our initial cleansing. The bridge fell silent as everyone present absorbed what they had just heard. Even facing extinction, the Korvathi showed no understanding of why their actions had been wrong. They regretted only that they had not killed more humans when they had the chance. President Pierce looked around at the faces of his people. Admiral Morrison, who had discovered the massacre. Dr. Foster, who had spent years developing weapons of extinction. Captain Brooks, who had heard the final transmissions from New Haven Colony. Any last words? Pierce asked the Korvathi elder. Only this, Vashkorth replied. We underestimated your capacity for total warfare. We thought you would submit like all the others. This was our error. You are truly apex predators. Use your strength wisely. The transmission ended. Pierce stood in silence for several minutes, considering the weight of what was about to happen. Then he turned to Admiral Morrison. "Execute. Final solution." Morrison activated the fleet-wide communications. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. Execute Operation Final Judgment. Activate all biological agents and planet crackers." What followed was swift and absolute. The biological weapons, designed specifically to target Korvathi physiology, spread through the fortress in minutes. The planet crackers destabilized the world's core, ensuring that nothing could survive on the surface. Within hours, the fortress world of Korvathes was a dead rock drifting in space. The last of the Korvathi had been eliminated, along with all their genetic material, ensuring they could never return. Admiral Morrison watched the planet's death throes from the bridge of the Retribution. "It is finished," he announced to President Pierce. Pierce nodded slowly. "Send word to all human colonies. The Korvathi threat is ended. Complete extermination has been achieved." Dr. Foster was already working on her final report. "Sir, we have eliminated all Korvathi genetic material, destroyed their homeworlds, and sterilized their former territory. The species is extinct. They can never threaten anyone again." As news of the Korvathi extinction spread throughout human space, reactions were mixed. Some celebrated the end of the threat. Others were sobered by what humanity had become in order to survive. But there was no question that the right choice had been made. The Korvathi had proven themselves incapable of coexistence. They understood only strength and domination. When faced with such an enemy, extinction had indeed been the only option. President Pierce issued a final statement to all of humanity. "Today marks the end of the Korvathi Empire and the end of their threat to peaceful species throughout the galaxy. We did not choose this war, but we finished it. Let this serve as a warning to any who would consider genocide against humanity." In the months that followed, human settlers began moving into former Korvathi territory. Memorials were established on dozens of worlds to remember the species the Korvathi had destroyed over the millennia. On the former site of Korvathes, humanity built the largest memorial of all. It contained the names of every human who had died at New Haven Colony, along with a simple inscription. They thought they were apex predators. They learned that humans do not forgive genocide. The memorial served its intended purpose. When other alien species eventually made contact with humanity, they approached with respect and caution. Word had spread throughout the galaxy about what happened to those who threatened human civilians. Humanity had learned something important about itself during the war with the Korvathi. When pushed to the brink of extinction, humans were capable of mobilizing their entire civilization for total warfare. They could set aside every difference and work together with unprecedented efficiency. But they had also learned something darker. When their families were threatened, when their children were murdered, humans were capable of cold, methodical genocide executed with scientific precision. The galaxy took note. Humanity was not just another peaceful species to be ignored or exploited. They were builders and explorers who preferred peace, but when that peace was shattered by acts of evil, they became something far more dangerous. They became the apex predators the Korvathi had claimed to be. And unlike the Korvathi, humans remembered their victims and honored their dead. The war was over. Humanity had survived, and the galaxy would never underestimate them again.